All right, so hello everybody. Welcome to the first webinar in our Data Jam webinar series. My name is Ashley Allred. I am the Education Program Leader at Cary Institute of Ecosystem Studies. And joining me today is Bess Kaplan, who is the Education Program Leader at Baltimore Ecosystem Study. For those of you who may be new to or haven't really been to Cary or interacted with Cary Institute, it's an ecological research institute where our scientists are global experts in the ecology of freshwater, forests, disease ecology, and cities. And we also have an education team. So we do programming throughout the year for K-12 and undergraduate students. And while we're getting settled in, continue to check in on the chat. It's good to hear from you so far. And yeah, so you all are here because you're interested in learning about the Hudson Data Jam competition. We thank you for being here with us. This is the first seminar in a series of seven webinars that we put together to help support you all in this extended distance learning environment. And we hope you'll consider joining the rest of them too. I'll give you more information about the remaining webinars at the end of the session. So some general housekeeping before we begin. As a reminder, the session is being recorded. You have the option to keep your camera on or off, but we do ask that you remain muted during the presentation until the question and answer session at the end. And finally, please use the chat to ask questions that may pop up during the presentation and let us know if you are having any technical difficulties. And with that, we'll get started. You can move to the next slide, Bess. So in this session, this is a general overview of the Hudson Data Jam competition. So I'll be sharing a little bit about what Data Jam is. Bess will be talking about why is it important for us to explore data with students and to encourage their understanding and empower them to know how to work with data. And then finally, I'll give you a brief website tutorial to show you all the resources that you'll need to be supported in the Data Jam competition. Sorry. Okay, so the Hudson Data Jam competition is really encapsulated by the title of our webinar series, which is Creatively Sharing Science Stories of the Hudson Valley. And it's open to middle and high school students. And I'll tell you a little bit more about our Family Data Jam option as well. So in this competition, students are looking at data that's been collected locally in the Hudson Valley region by scientists at Cary Institute, as well as organizations like the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. And so the students are looking at data that interests them, and then they're coming up with a creative way to share their understanding with others. And like I mentioned, there are three categories. So middle school students can compete, high school students, and also a family data jam that allows families to participate, and it involves, or it allows more involvement from parents and guardians and caregivers to work with their children, so siblings can work together, and it even opens up for the opportunity for elementary students to participate in Data Jam. Next slide. A brief history of Data Jam. So we've been doing the Hudson Data Jam at Cary since 2014, but it actually began at the Coronado Basin Long-Term Ecological Research Station in New Mexico back in 2012. And since then, there are now a total of 7 sites across the country. And I did a little bit of number crunching, and since 2014, the Hudson Data Jam competition has seen 474 student projects, which amounts to a little over 1,200 students that have been reached through the Data Jam competition. Next slide. A brief overview of the main contest essentials for Data Jam. So the very first step that students are going to take is they're going to pick some data that's interesting and exciting to them. So on our website, there are many data sets to choose from, covering many different topics, from air pollution, water pollution, looking at bird migration, fish populations in the Hudson River, Lyme disease, ecology, all sorts of things. Once they choose the data they're going to explore, they work independently or with a group to analyze and graph the data to see what kind of patterns emerge and see, what's going on in the environment. Next slide. And then once they have found their data, they've done some graphs and found patterns, they are going to work to communicate in a creative way the story that the data is telling them. So in the past, students have done all sorts of projects. The imagination really is the limit. As you can see on the slide, there is a storybook about bird migration. On the right is a video about pharmaceuticals in the Hudson River. People have done songs, poems, musical acts, they've done comics, all sorts of things. So we encourage creativity. And then finally, the students are writing a report and submitting their creative project to be judged. And they are judged by a team of educators, artists, and scientists. And so they're using a rubric to judge the work of the students. And then finally, awards, cash prizes are given to the middle school, high school, and family data jam categories. And as a final, oh, you can go back, sorry. At the bottom of the slide, I really think like the essence of Data Jam is that we're getting kids excited about studying their local ecosystem in the Hudson Valley region, and we're increasing their understanding of what's all around them. But you're also empowering them to use data and sharing what they discover with others. And then next slide. These are just a few more examples of the types of projects that students have done. There's a huge jigsaw puzzle on the left that's interactive. There's stop motion action videos, as well as comic books. And we're having our creative webinars in 2 weeks. So I encourage you to check those out. Next slide. As I mentioned, there's tons of different topics on the CARI website for different data sets. So there's data sets on zebra mussels, invasive plant species, bird migration, camera trapping, air quality data, climate change related topics. Like there's something for everybody there on the CARI website. So this is a nutshell of what the Hudson Data Jam competition is. And now I'll turn it over to Bess, who will share why exploring data is important. And following that, I'll give you a brief tutorial of the website.
Okay, thanks, Ashley. So the next set of slides are going to focus on data literacy and why we should explore data and have our students exploring data. So before we get into what exactly we mean by data literacy, I would like to do a brief activity if folks are able to access this link. I'm going to put it in the chat. And if you could click on the link, it's going to bring you to something called Jamboard, which those of you that are educators may be using already. Jamboard is an interactive tool where your students can add their ideas and comment on other people's ideas, and you can move their ideas around and group them and discuss them. So what I would like for everyone to do is to drop a sticky note And in the sticky note, I want you to define data literacy. What do you think data literacy is? And if you haven't used Jamboard before, can you guys see my mouse? So this is the sticky note feature. Oh, somebody's already done it. So you click on that, you type in your thought, and you drop it into the Jamboard. And then you can also respond to somebody else's sticky note if you want to add to their idea. So if everybody could just take a moment and drop your ideas. And I'm going to go ahead and make some of these bigger so we can see them. We've got one idea so far. There we go. Painting a picture with data. Excellent. Let's move these around. Okay. Let's see what we have here. Oh, someone put their name on it. That's fine. What's great about Jamboard is it can be anonymous if your students don't want to identify themselves with their responses. So let's see what we have here. Data literacy means being able to interpret data and determine trends, understand what scientific data means, knowing what to do with historical numbers to improve the future. That's an interesting one. Creating graphs and doing statistics. I'll put that one down here. Painting a picture with data, the ability to read and use information provided and to explain scientific phenomena. So these are really great. Any other ideas? Okay, so some trends that I see here, some ideas that you all have put forth are, one is being able to use data. So painting a picture with data, reading and using information. Other ideas, being able to interpret data, determine trends, understand scientific data. These are all I agree with all of these, that these are important components of data literacy. So let's go back into the presentation and get ourselves a definition of data literacy. Oh, went too far. So data literacy is defined as the ability to understand and use data to inform decisions. So your ideas put together really capture this definition of data literacy really well. And the data literate individual can understand, explain, and document the utility and the limitations of data. They can identify, collect, evaluate, analyze, interpret, present, and protect data. But it's more than just being able to do all of these different things with a data set. So why do we care? Why do we want students to be able to do all of these different things with data? So the short answer is that even though more attention is being paid to data literacy in K-12 and college curriculum, we are still seeing high school graduates and college graduates with lacking the proficiency in data needed to conduct research or to enter certain careers that involve working with data. And that's really important because as students move into the workforce, we want them to have the potential to go into different fields that require this really in-depth understanding of data and how to use data. But it's not just, data literacy is not just a means to gain employment. Um, Data literacy also addresses certain habits of mind. And there we go. So you may or may not have heard of the term habits of mind before. Habits of mind can be thought of as life-related skills necessary to effectively operate in society. And if we think about this list of habits of mind and data literacy, I'm going to highlight just a couple here: flexibility and curiosity, and tie these into data literacy. So with flexibility, data literate students are comfortable with messiness and uncertainty and accepting failure. They're open to challenging beliefs and are able to place trust in the scientific process. For curiosity, data literate students can, they show a drive for knowledge and understanding that leads to inquiry, and they can see creative possibilities and new ways to represent data. And so when we talk about data literacy, what we really mean is students being able to effectively operate in a society that is asking them to interpret big ideas and big numbers, and to be able to think critically about the world around them. So data literacy is really prominent in the next generation science standards. And for those of you that are classroom teachers, you're probably very familiar with this set of standards. Just to remind folks, the next generation science standards are a set of national standards that came out in 2012 and have been adopted by many of the states in the US, not all states, but New York has adopted these standards and have been in the process of revamping their curriculum to address these science standards. And these are the 8 science practices that show up in the next generation science standards. And you can see that 4 of these practices directly address working with data. So again, data is really important, not just for habits of mind and for being able to make good decisions as an adult, but also for learning and understanding science. So how does Data Jam address data literacy? So there's 4 ways I'm just going to mention briefly here. The first is accessing and using big data. So what we mean by big data are large data sets. These data sets are complex. They're not necessarily summarized in any sort of way. They may span years or decades even, as you'll see as you get into some of the CARI data sets that are available for Data Jam. So being able to access and use big data allows students to answer the questions of, well, where can I even find data sets? How can I use them to understand something? And what questions can I answer with this data? The Data Jams also focuses on helping students learn how to organize, summarize, and synthesize data. So here we really try to guide the students to filter data sets to answer a specific scientific question. We want the students to be able to determine if their results are relevant, if they're reliable, to understand if they've chosen the right descriptive statistics to describe and explain their data, and to determine what sort of graph they need to create. Did they choose an appropriate representation? So we provide a lot of opportunities and supports in Data Jam to help students do these types of analyses with their data. The third one is evaluate and critique an argument using data and reasoning. So claims evidence reasoning, there's a big push for students to be able to support a claim with evidence and with reasoning, and the Data Jam really supports those efforts. So students are able to identify strengths and limitations of their data or of their representation of the data, and also think about how their representation could be improved. And finally, dealing with variability. So variability comes with data. It just does. And the Data Jam really helps students think about how they can limit variability, not just when carrying out an initial investigation, but then also if they do see a lot of variability in their data, they need to interpret it and explain it. They also need to be able to explain where this variability comes from. Is it natural variation in nature, chance occurrence in research, human error? And the Data Jam does a really good job in supporting students as they deal with variability in their data set. So I thought you all might like to see how students that have participated in past Data Jams have felt about working with data. So this slide has data from a post survey that students who participated in the Data Jam completed from 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, and 2020. We had a 2-year gap where we actually didn't ask this question. So why did students participate in the Data Jam in the first place? And the lower the number, the closer to 1, that is more important. The higher the number, the least important. So as you can see, working with data is not typically a reason that students choose to do Data Jam. And we get it, we understand that. They're more interested in the prize money. And in many cases, the teacher is making them do it. So data is not necessarily a motivating factor. But how confident are students in working with data? So this slide shows before and after participating in the Data Jam, how confident students are in working with data. And what we're really pleased to see is that after students participate, their confidence in working with data goes up quite a bit. So we're really happy to see that. And finally, this is a little hard to see, but we asked the students how easy or difficult different parts of the Data Jam were. So these 2 bars are the 2 that address data. The first is analyzing and interpreting the data set, and the second is explaining the science behind the data set. And as you can see, students find those 2 activities slightly more difficult than many of the other activities involved in the Data Jam. And again, that's not surprising given what we know about student data literacy in the K-12 classroom. So I'm going to turn it back over to Ashley to talk about where you can find the information you need to actually run a successful Data Jam.
All right, thank you, Beth. So so I encourage all of you after this webinar to really dive into the website. I'm going to give you a really brief bird's eye view of what all we have, but I don't want to get too stuck in the weeds showing you all the different documents and everything, but I'll give you an orientation. So the general steps are to go to the Carey Institute website, which I'll show you, and on the top tab, we'll visit Eco Inquiry and then Data Jam Competition. And so I'll go ahead and share my screen, Beth, if that works. Let's see.
Yep, I stopped sharing, so it's all yours.
Okay, thanks. All right. And then I'll do this. All right, so can you all see my screen, Beth?
Yes.
All right. So we're going to go to the Carey Institute website, which is careyinstitute.org. We'll go to Eco Inquiry, and this drop-down menu, it includes all of the different programming that we do at Carey Institute for K-12 and college. And we also have teaching materials over to the right that you can explore as well. For now, we are going to go to Data Jam Competition. So this is our landing page for Data Jam. And what's nice is at the very front and center are 3 buttons that are very helpful. So one is our registration button, and this is for what we call advisors. So this includes educators, all of you here today, educators, family, whoever wants to participate in Data Jam, they are going to register the students that will be creating the projects. So I'll just show you that form briefly. It's really simple and straightforward. You're giving information about if you are a teacher or parent guardian, um, the number of students that you anticipate participating, information about your school, and so forth. There's a button for Family Data Jam if you are interested in getting your children or younger elementary age kids involved with Data Jam. And then there's a button for all of the webinars. So all of them will be recorded and put on this website. The main thing I want you to notice is on the right side of the website, there are all these different links that'll take you to all the information that you need for Data Jam. And below that are the deadlines and dates. So the registration deadline and the parent guardian consent forms for all students are due on April 16th. So it's still a few months away. April 30th is the date that all the projects are submitted online. And even in a normal non-pandemic year, all projects are still submitted online. And that's so that we can disperse them to the judges to score. And then finally, we'll have a virtual Data Jam Expo and awards ceremony. And it'll be through Zoom. And this is where we will announce who won the cash prizes, and we'll be able to showcase some of these projects as well. And in a normal year, we would be doing that part of it in person, which is a ton of fun. So I encourage you to look into doing Data Jam, not only this year, but in future years as well, because the award ceremony is a great time. So I'm going to go back up to Contest Essentials. This is the landing page for all of the information really that you would need to know about Data Jam, about registration. You'll notice there are videos sprinkled throughout our web pages, which I encourage you to watch. Some of these are really great to show students to get them excited and motivated and give them a better understanding of what Data Jam is. So that can do a little bit of the work for you and sharing it with your students. There's a teaching and advising resources, and it's just what it sounds like. We also encourage you to email us. We have a teachers only Google Drive folder, which has sample graphs for all of our data sets. So that could be something that's really useful. We also have information about the state standards. And down at the bottom are additional resources. So things like our ecology lesson plans on our website. There's links that can help you get started with creating simple graphs as well. And then our important documents page. This is probably the place I would tell you to go first. So when you go to important documents, you'll see Data Jam Guidebook. And this PDF has all the details about Data Jam all in one place that you can print out or just simply have in a digital PDF. And this has all of your registration, deadlines, background Data Jam, information about consent forms. Everything is in this guidebook. And the second thing I'll really highlight here is the parent guardian consent form. So every student participating must have this signed, and we have to have it in order for the projects to be judged. So if we get a project that's amazing, but we don't have the parent consent form, we unfortunately cannot judge it, and that would be a really sad day. So please, please, please get your parent and guardian consent forms turned into us. And then there's other forms that can support you and your students. So the guidebook is great for supporting you. The student planning sheet is great for supporting students. It kind of gives them a structure with, breaks it up into smaller pieces, creates deadlines for them. And there's also the report form where students are guided in how to type up their report. There's also a judging rubric, which is a nice guide for students and teachers to check in about, that can help guide how the projects are put together and making sure that you're addressing everything that is going to be judged. And then finally, there's Family Data Jam links. So the main difference in Family Data Jam is that they are not required to write a full-length report, but they are required to do a brief summary of the trends that they're finding in their project. And then the fun part is, or one of the fun parts, is the datasets website. So this is a great place to bring your students at the very beginning and have them go through and see what topics really jump out at them and capture their attention. So as you can see, there's a photo with each data set. Here's one on zebra mussels. There's one on Lyme disease. There's all these different topics. And if you click on one, let's click on, let's see, we'll just click on zebra mussels. Each data set has its own website. And on this website, you'll find a background material button. And so this is a really great background information sheet that gives students a background on why is it even important and interesting to be looking at this data. At zebra mussels, as many of you probably know, they are a huge invasive species in the Hudson River. And what's nice on these background sheets is they even provide kind of prompting questions to get students thinking about the things they could look at with the data. So they're called inquiry idea starters. And it kind of gets them looking at, you know, what variables are changing that could influence whatever they're looking at. In this case, we're looking at the zebra mussel population in the Hudson River. And then, of course, there is the data as well. So when you click on the data button, it takes you to an Excel sheet. So this particular data set is actually a more advanced data set. But with each data set, you'll notice that there's years, these go back all the way to 1987 through 2014. And students and teachers, you can download the file. And then this is the data that you can work with to create graphs and perform your analyses. And it's important to note that there are different levels. So if you are brand new to Data Jam, if your students are new to working with data, highly encourage you to check out the level 1 data sets. I was trying to find, like, for example, if we go and look at our bird migration data set, you'll notice that the data set's looking a little bit simpler. So you have your years and you have the dates that the birds are arriving each year. So we're kind of looking at migration and how birds' migration arrival dates has changed with time from 1887 to the present day. And this particular data set is interesting because there are 5 different species of birds that students can explore. And then the last thing I'll show you is the project gallery. So this is also a good thing to show students from the very beginning and for you as well. So this has all of the winning projects from past years, all the way back to 2014. So if you want to get a good taste for the types of projects that students have submitted, this is the place to go. For example, our 2020 winners, there was kind of a video scrapbook of water chestnut and water celery. There was this beautiful spring migration story picture book. and then all sorts of videos, like a Jeopardy themed video. This one shows kind of a model version of what students can create. So the student created bar graphs out of clay. And then finally, there were videos and other illustrations. And yeah, I think, yeah, that's an overview of the website. I'm gonna stop sharing. And then Beth, can you show the final slide, please? Thanks. All right, so that is going to bring us to the end of our Data Jam overview. Here again are the main deadlines for the Data Jam competition, as well as our webinar lineup. So again, on Thursday, we have Karen Bodner joining us from Irvington Middle School down in Westchester, who has some great ideas for how to structure Data Jam for your students, which I think is applicable both to middle school and high school and